Is this the dagger?
G'day guys, JB here. We are in February. We are a couple of weeks away from the All-Star break. We are days away from the trade deadline, but that means it's now time to update my MVP race to the end of January 2026 for, of course, the 25-26 NBA season. There have been some players that have shuffled a little bit. There have been some players that have dropped out of conversations, and there are some guys that after return are probably going to make another hard run towards the ultimate goal. Now for me, I think it's pretty clear cut early on in the piece, and I don't think much in that space has changed, but there's still time for others to make a case, and certainly in my opinion at least make it known that their all NBA capacity certainly has been there this season. So let's get into it. Let's get into my MVP race to the end of January for the 25-26 NBA season. As always, the qualifying numbers. 65 game pace as outlined by the NBA. For me, I think it should be 70. Always have and probably always will, to be honest with you. But 65 game pace, you need to be the leader in your team winning games. Needs to be limited to no trade talk pretty much, let alone being traded. And of course your team in contention for the playoffs. Now you'll notice there's some differences there when it comes to the seeding of players, when it comes to the conversations around players being potential upfront chances or guys that just get an honourable mention. But they're the parameters that I work with throughout the season. It's done on a daily basis, not a weekly, not a monthly, not a big performance basis, on a daily basis. This is something I keep track of every single day to keep myself as present as possible with the situation of the league. Now that we have that out of the way, 65 game pace, leading your team to wins, little to no trade talk or trades in general, and your team with playoff hopes. I'm going to get into my honourable mentions list. I don't know what I was trying there with that spoonerism. My honourable mentions list, so we can just see who is on the verge of cracking into the top 10 and who have certainly been some of the leading contenders in other areas around the league. First honourable mention goes to a man that has been thereabouts throughout the year, has dealt with a couple of trades now, has lost a key rotational piece, and of course lost his star point guard, but the team themselves have played better without that star point guard throughout the year and will now need to go into a little bit of an adjustment to see exactly what they can do for the rest of it, and just in a matter of fact whether that will impact them and their chances towards the playoffs, let alone the play-in tournament. And that is the Atlanta Hawks and their star forward Jalen Johnson. For the season, Johnson 23.1 points, 10.5 rebounds, 8 assists, 1.3 steals, 0.5 blocks on 3.5 turnovers, shooting 49.9 from the field, 36% from deep, and 78% from the free throw line. He has played in 46 games, averaging 35.6 minutes in those games. The Hawks' record is a perfect 500 when he plays at 23 and 23. I have him as the best player in 14 wins in those games. But Atlanta currently sitting 10th. They are at the bottom of the play-in tournament, and there are a couple of teams that are chasing them hard. I don't think they're chasing them hard enough to the point where they will fall out. But for Atlanta, it is a good reminder that, hey, good things do come to those who wait, but you can't be too patient as to have someone step ahead of you in the line. Johnson himself has had another remarkable year. He had a really good year last year, a breakout year, and had a real case as Atlanta's best player. This year, there's no question for me that he's Atlanta's best player. One of, if not the most improved players in the league. He is playing next to the guy who I would probably consider top 2 in that award, and I think there's another guy who almost featured in this list and would have had I have made it a couple of weeks ago, who I think will win it. I think Johnson certainly gets a mention, but he has had a really, really good season. It's going to be interesting to see exactly what Atlanta are able to do now. They probably need to clear a couple of contracts up if they want to land one more piece. But you look at some of the key rotations that this side has. If you've got Johnson that's going to lead the charge, potentially pair him up with another piece, all of a sudden the Hawks become a lot more competitive in the Eastern Conference. And while they'd like to do it this year when the depth isn't there, it's certainly good signs for a future project going ahead. But Johnson has been spectacular this year, and that is why he is sitting amongst my honourable mentions, the first of 3 in this list for my MVP case to the end of January for the 25-26 NBA season. My second honourable mention in my MVP race to the end of January for the 25-26 NBA season is a former 2-time MVP, of course the only unanimous MVP in league history. He is the greatest shooter of all time, and he is still producing at a rate that really does demand that we hurry up and get some pieces around him if I'm the front office, because there is still plenty of milk in this cow to get. And that's a really horrible way to put it, but when you look at the age of Steph and you factor in the Warriors list, there is some limited time available to capitalise on this. But my second honourable mention is Steph Curry of the Golden State Warriors. Steph this season, 27.2 points, 3.5 rebounds, 4.8 assists, 1.1 steals, 0.4 blocks on 2.8 turnovers, shooting 46.8% from the field, 39.1 from deep, and 93.1 from the free throw line. Factoring in Steph's age and factoring in the lack of pieces around him, he is having a phenomenal season. It'd just be even better if they could finally get some guys around him to help perform. Steph has played in 39 of a possible 50 games there for Golden State, 31.3 minutes in those games, and his record there, 23-16. So the Warriors looking like a far better team when he's in it than when he's out of it. He's 23-16. I mean, compared to Golden State themselves, who are 27-23, they are actually a far better team just with him than without him. So that gives him a bit of credence, and I've got him leading them to 14 of those 23 wins. Going to have to shoulder a bit more of a load though. Obviously Jimmy Butler going out with a torn ACL is huge, but now there are conversations around, are they looking to try and acquire someone like a Giannis, who certainly has been available for the picking over the last couple of weeks, but then what does that look like for the rest of your roster? Do you have enough salary around this guy now to be that flexible with a Giannis? Do you have the other complementary pieces that you need along with a Giannis? You know, are 2 people of that caliber enough? I don't know. What I do know is that what Steph is producing now, considering what he's playing with, I would hazard a guess that that's going to make his life a hell of a lot easier. What that does for the rest of the team, I don't know, but I know from a Steph standpoint, considering he is still playing at an absolutely elite level this year, you would really be wanting this guy to hurry up and get something around him to help compete. He's still the standard bearer for shooting, and to be fair, I think he remains the standard bearer for shooting for at least the next 20 years. He's an all-time talent, he's a generational talent, and he's trying to continue that generational run. Second honourable mention in my MVP race to the end of January for the 25-26 NBA season, Steph Curry of the Golden State Warriors. And now my third honourable mention. Yes, that's right, 3 people who very well have a case of being on this list and being right up there in this list. And to be honest with you, it has just come down to seeding here in the West for some of these guys, and not much difference when you look at who number 10 is going to be compared to Anthony Edwards, who is my other honourable mention, the Ant-Man from the Minnesota Timberwolves, continuing to have another big season. I mean, his game has changed a lot since he entered as a rookie, but he's still got signs there that he has one of the most rounded games for a shooting guard in this league and remains one of the most exciting shooting guards in this league. For the Minnesota Timberwolves this year, Edwards has averaged 29.4 points, 5.2 rebounds, 3.7 assists, 1.3 steals, and 0.8 blocks on 2.7 turnovers. His shooting splits, they are getting better and becoming more rounded, meaning you cannot have this guy getting you in any form of trouble from anywhere on the floor. 49.5 from the field, 40.9 from deep, and 79.9 from the free throw line. So he's almost at that passable 80%. He's well and truly as a guard above that passable field goal percent. You want a minimum, for me as a guard, minimum 47% from a starting guard. Otherwise, you've got to bring that guy off the bench almost, unless you're an elite level player who's proven that, of course. And 40.9 from deep. I mean, he's really rounded that offensive game. He's not attacking the rack like he used to, but it's still there. He's still competitive. He's still intense. He's still very serviceable on the defensive end, and will be for quite some time as a younger guy. But yeah, Ant-Man out there performing well. He does have some nice pieces around him this year. I think that Minnesota team is a little underrated with who has been contributing there, but Ant to me has been the leader. and it's not a question for me that he has been the leader. He's played in 40 games compared to the 50 total for Minnesota. In those 40 games, 35.3 minutes a game, so he's essentially per 36, which is really positive to see. 25 and 15 record. Now, when you compare that to the rest of the team, 25 and 15, they are 31 and 19. So much of a muchness with their record. 14 wins is what I've got him credited for in those 25 games. Again, I said he's got some real nice pieces around him. DiVincenzo has played really well this year. McDaniels continues to play well. But Julius Randle, probably not getting the coverage that he does deserve. He has been a very credible player for them this year. For me, if you're basing your All-Stars based on when the starters were picked, Randle probably needs to be a reserve. That's not to take away from Edwards. He's been an absolute star. But Minnesota, a pretty deep team, which does help the case here for Anthony Edwards, the leader of that team, who I have as my third honourable mention to the end of January in my 2025-26 NBA MVP race. And now we move into the top 10, and I mentioned that a lot of this is spread by seeding. That's a really big case right now when it comes down to this guy, but he is having one of the all-time seasons for guys that are 37 plus years of age. One of the two all-time seasons from a scoring standpoint of 37 plus. The only guy that's ahead of him historically at the age of 37 plus is Steph Curry. So that's the kind of production that both of these guys are bringing in. But at number 10, I have Kevin Durant of the Houston Rockets. Durant this year looked like he was just going to be a fill and patch guy because there's so much depth of talent in Houston right now on both sides of the ball. But he has turned into the absolute number one option on this team, which has really freed them up. And they are consistently a top 4 team in the Western Conference. Kevin Durant this year, 26.2 points, 5.4 rebounds, 4.6 assists, 0.7 steals and 0.9 blocks on 3 turnovers. And he is getting right up there towards a 50, 40, 90 season. He has consistently been this pretty much since 2010, which is a really scary thought. 51% from the field, 40.5 from deep, 88.6 from the free throw line. And he has been pretty durable as well. When you look at the fact that Houston currently sitting 30 and 17 in 4th spot, 47 games for the team, 45 games for Kevin Durant, 36.8 minutes a game in those games. They're 28 and 17 in the contest that he's played, and 14 wins to his name. There's a lot of players nowadays that become ageless. I have a sense that this game becomes a lot easier the more that it evolves through time. I don't think that I'm out of place saying that. I think the rules have adjusted the game very well for players to be able to move a lot more freely, not have as much physical contact. Yeah, they're still getting up and down the floor, and you can argue that the possession game is as high as it was in the early to mid 80s, where you were seeing teams run, at paces of 110. That's the kind of pace we're seeing back in the game. But these guys are now getting older and still able to adjust to that. Now, numbers are inflated because of that. I don't want anyone to not take away from that. Kevin Durant doesn't post this in the mid-2000s. He probably doesn't post this early on in his career. Points per 36 and points per possession are relevant in this conversation. But Kevin Durant is leading Houston to wins. He has plug and played into a team that was concerned whether he would do that or not. But this is probably the best roster. In fact, it is the best roster he's had since Golden State, and he's making the most of it. He just happens to be running into some, deeper teams now that he's an older guy. Houston currently sitting in the 4th seed. Kevin Durant currently sitting number 10 in my MVP race to the end of January for the 25-26 NBA season. Coming in at number 9, and this would have to be the lowest that I've had this guy in any MVP race that he has participated in. Like, genuinely contended in. And the only reason he's sitting here is because he's just had a month out and he's on the border of not qualifying now for the MVP. At number 9, I have Nikola Jokic of the Denver Nuggets. That is a weird and wild sentence to say, especially when you look at who I'm going to have against him. But I have to be consistent. I have to look at the fact of games missed, of impact on wins in games played, and from a percentage standpoint on that front, absolutely you've got to have him right at the top. There's no question about that. I think he's nearly been Denver's best defender this year. And they've won quite a number of games, and he's had quite a number of games where he has been their best outright defender. It doesn't even look close. So his game just continues to evolve even as a big man. But the thing I have to factor in is games missed. And I'm not going to do an NBA.com where, he's fallen to second or fallen to third. No, I'm going to be honest with you. Around the league, guys that are contributing and deserve to get their flowers. And I've got no issues in going to a florist and handing out bouquets left, right, and centre when it comes to this stuff. Let's look at Nikola Jokic on the season. 29.7 points, 12.2 rebounds, 10.8 assists, 1.4 steals, 0.7 blocks on 3.5 turnovers. And let's add the efficiency in of 60.8 from the field, 43.9 from deep, and 84.7 from the free throw line. If he ticks over 30 points a game on 60% splits, it may very well be, in fact it would be, the most efficient 30-point season in the history of the sport. Considering Giannis has back-to-back 30s on 60%, imagine adding in effective free throw percentages and extremely efficient three-point shooting. Now, the question does come down to Jokic. Jokic has played 33 games. Denver has played 49. Jokic has 2 games spare for the rest of the year. That's the ultimate concern, and a big guy who's just had an injury. So he's played 33 of 49. He can miss 17. You've got to play 65. If he misses 2 more games, he's done. But in saying that, he's going to be the reason they win quite a lot of games moving forward. 34.3 minutes in those games played, 23 and 10 record, and I've got him for 15 wins. He has contributed in the last couple of games to end the month, which has also helped his standing. Because we could have been looking at an honourable mention. That's not to take away from the man, but that's just factoring in the fact that everyone else has been on the floor. Your best ability is availability, and unfortunately this has been pretty much the most unavailable Jokic has been for his career. And in saying that, I still think he has a chance to finish top 5 by the end of the year if he recovers. But right now, I've got him 9th in my MVP race to the end of January for the 25-26 NBA season. Moving on over to number 8. And again, this is a weird one for me to look at because I look at Jokic and everyone goes, you worry about seedings, you worry about guys leading to wins. Yeah, I understand that Denver are a top 2, top 3 team and have been all year. And they had a really nice run without Jokic. But there's a level of consistency that has to come with a team that was expected not to do anything. I personally predicted bottom 5 and had a roster of guys where you went, well, you can contribute, but you're going to have to play a bigger role than expected, and I don't know whether you can manage it. Well, the truth of the fact is that a lot of these guys have managed it, and part of it comes down to the leadership that they've got around them. And at number 8, with that leadership, with the impact on play, I have Devin Booker of the Phoenix Suns. And again, I've talked about this with Devin Booker for a number of years now. The guy can lead a team. He's led successful teams. He can play anywhere on the ball. He's a very good combo guard. But no one looks at that traditional, essentially Devin Booker's a 25, 5 and 5 guy. If you put that up for your career, you are an absolute elite of the elite shooting guard. But because he's played on some poor Phoenix teams and the success came around Chris Paul, who, as we know, in with the right crowd, shall we say, of course that credit was never going to be there. And I seem to rehash this at the same time, and I'm just trying to point out the facts. He leads them to an all-time record for the franchise. He gets them on blistering starts. He has all these pieces moving in and out around him that don't make sense because they were really moved around for someone else who couldn't deliver. Just don't make any sense. The guy's the all-time point scorer for the Suns. You got to pay him more respect there. And he's had a really nice season once again. He's got some really good contributors. Your Colin Gillespie's, your Grayson Allen, your Mark Williams, certainly a Dylan Brooks, who we've seen really contributing as well. But there's no reason that Devin Booker should not be in this conversation, and certainly needs to be in all NBA conversations this year. 25.4 points, 4 rebounds, 6.2 assists, 0.9 steals and 0.3 blocks on 3.3 turnovers, 45.6% from the field, 31.3 from deep and 86.4 from the free throw line. I know I mentioned that field goal shooting stuff before. I think Devin Booker's proven that he can really lead people and can be the elite of the elite. He has been for a number of years. 41 games played of a possible 49 games played, 34 minutes in those games. The Suns are 26 and 15 in those games, and I've got him responsible for 16 wins. Plenty of time up his sleeve to keep the consistency up. I wouldn't be shocked to see Phoenix finish higher than they do at 7th, but they've held there all year. They've been really tough to move, and a lot of it has come down to the fact that Devin Booker has been so consistent, and that's a big part of the reason why I have him at number 8 in my MVP race to the end of January for the 25-26 NBA season. Coming in at number 7, and this is a guy that everyone is loving because of the numbers, and there's no reason to not love a guy because of the numbers. But you need to win, you need to be efficient, you need to deliver. Sometimes the winning, sometimes the delivery, and sometimes the efficiency is what really hurts this guy. But there's no doubt of the absolute generational talent that he is and the capabilities that he has around on his team. At number 7, I have Luka Doncic of the Los Angeles Lakers, and he's having another monster year. Numbers-wise is never going to be an issue for Luka. 33.7 points, 7.8 rebounds, 8.8 assists, 1.5 steals, 0.5 blocks and 4.3 turnovers, 47.7% from the field, 34.7% from deep, and 78% from the free throw line. And yet the conversation still revolves around the guy who is going to play the most minutes in league history, who's going to play the most games in league history, who's going to have the most points in league history. I've got no issues with that guy having a very pertinent conversation surrounding him and the end of his career. But this team does not move forward unless he moves over. It's proven once again. And they've had injuries as well. Fair bump to the Lakers. They've had some injuries. They've had some inconsistent play out of some guys. But a lot of that inconsistent play out of some of those guys comes from the fact that their touches aren't there because Luka has to feed the ball somewhere else. That is just a harsh reality of the situation. Luka has played in 39 of 47 games this year for the Lakers. He's averaged 36.2 minutes in those, so you're essentially looking at the true per 36 for Luka Doncic, which is a scary thought. They're 25 and 14 in those games. So Luka as the man, 25 and 14 games above 500, would be good enough, if kept consistent, to be sitting 4th in the West. They currently sit 6th in the West. And I've got him responsible for 17 of those wins. So he's had a really big season, there's no doubt about it, and they do have some nice pieces. Don't let spin let you believe that some of the guys that they recruited, and they chose to recruit, whether you signed them late or whether you signed them early, you chose to recruit them. You thought that they could potentially fit this team. Don't let people say they don't fit, because they clearly have, because we've seen the success that Luka has brought to this team. Any question around fitness, I certainly don't think is there, considering there are other guys who would deem better athletes that have not played as many games this year. Luka's doing fine. Luka's doing great. I just think they really need to move on to really see this guy flourish and see this team flourish. And when that happens, this ranking goes higher. But right now, all factors considered, I have Luka Doncic at 7th to the end of January in my 25-26 NBA MVP race. At number 6, I have a guy who has just lost one of his key rotational teammates on a doping violation. I have another teammate who has managed to, in the last month, wind the clock back at least 3 or 4 times to the point where you go, hey, is he right? And then I look at the rest of the team and wonder where the inconsistencies come from and realise that the focus is then taken away, not only from this guy, but thrown back onto these older guys with their inconsistencies, which then cause, in turn, a domino effect for the inconsistencies for the rest of their team. But this guy has been an absolute freak this year. He's been a genuine leader. At number 6, I have Tyrese Maxey of the Philadelphia 76ers. Say it all the time. He gets downhill, he pulls the trigger, he plays well defensively. He's one of the elite quick guards in this league, and one of the elite quick guards when you look at both sides of the ball that the league has seen to this level for quite some time. But again, he's tucked away in Philadelphia where the narrative is about guys who can't get on the floor, guys who are old, and a focus on a young contingent that just doesn't quite probably have the right veteran leadership around it at the moment. Tyrese Maxey on the season, 29.2 points, 4.2 rebounds, 6.9 assists, 2 steals, 0.9 blocks on 2.4 turnovers, 47.2% from the field, 38.9 from deep, and 88.5 from the free throw line. He has been healthy as well. I've got to give Maxey credit for that. 46 of a possible 48 games played this year. Philadelphia sitting 6th in the Eastern Conference. He's played in 39 minutes as well. He is one of the leading minute guys in the league when you factor all of this in. 26 and 20 record, which is the equivalent of what they're sitting at 27 and 21 right now. And I've got him responsible for 19 of those wins. Yes, I have him responsible for more victories for Philadelphia than Luka for the Lakers. Keeping in mind Philadelphia have won 2 less games. this is what happens when you don't get a balanced and even coverage of the league. Because, yeah, it's a star-powered league, but the reason that it becomes so star-powered is because you don't focus on the positives like this. And Maxi gets his fair share of coverage, mind you, but not to the extent that he really should. Tremendous pairing with VJ Edgecombe, who has been one of the underrated rookies, still underrated in my opinion. The conversation really has shifted to Con Knipple and Cooper Flagg by all means, as it should. But if you want to look at the two-way nature of the sport, you make a case VJ Edgecombe has been the Rookie of the Year. That's a great pairing. Quinton Grimes has been, really solid this year off the bench. Jared McCain has been solid off the bench. There has just been a lack of veteran presence and leadership here with Philadelphia, which has cost them, and in turn probably meant there's a little bit of extra mentorship and leadership Maxi has had to incur. Factoring all of this in, that's why I have him at number 6 in my MVP race to the end of January for the 25-26 NBA season. We now move into the top 5, and the top 5 is going to be pretty consistent and has been pretty consistent for most of the year. It's very much matchy-matchy for most of the way. There are a few more players that are certainly starting to get into this conversation. A guy we just talked about, Tyrese Maxey, has his moments where I have him sitting in my top 5. But when it comes to having to break a tie, I really have to consider the team seedings. Now, I could do it in reverse, which would absolutely be awesome to do, but I don't think it's fair to punish a team that has taken priority and put itself in the best possible playoff position. Right now, at number 5, I have Jaylen Brown of the Boston Celtics. Brown this year has again stepped up. I've seen him as one of their leaders for multiple years now. There were years there where I thought he was an all-star ahead of a Jason Tatum. I thought he had seasons where he certainly started better than Jason Tatum. But he's just proving right now why he's been All-NBA, why he has been a Finals MVP, and why he's been a mainstay for Boston for the best part of a decade now. And has, again, been, unfortunately, the saddle guy, the guy next to Jason Tatum. And Tatum has had that kind of run where Tatum's probably the best Celtic since Larry Bird, and Jaylen Brown's been lost in that shuffle. Jaylen Brown has been his Kevin McHale. That's probably the equivalent I can put on that one there. Brown this season, 29.4 points, 6.8 rebounds, 4.9 assists, 1 steal, 0.4 blocks on 3.6 turnovers, 48.3 from the field, 35.5 from deep, and 77.7 from the free throw line. And it's probably not uncommon for me to compare him to be the Kevin McHale of Larry Bird to what Brown is now being for Tatum, considering that in the absolute best season McHale had, he was a top 5 MVP finish. I think Jaylen Brown has a very good case for that this year. Brown has played in 44 games for the Celtics this year, and that means that he has played in 44 of a possible 48. 34.4 minutes per game in those games, and the Celtics are 27-17 in those games that he has played. I've got him best for 19 wins there, and he has had another sensational year. There are some trade rumours floating around for some of these rotational pieces for Boston. I don't necessarily like them, and there's also some conversation around Jason Tatum now not returning this year. Not necessarily a negative when you look at how they've performed, but when you factor it all in, it's a big reason that I've got Jaylen Brown at number 5 in my MVP race to the end of January for the 25-26 NBA season. Coming in at number 4 is a guy that has been right up in conversation to the MVP race for me for the last couple of years. He's really played out in Cleveland, but it comes down to the fact that he's in a small market, and now the conversation is beginning to revolve around a guy who is no longer on this team, who may be on this team later, and there's no focus on it. It's really, really weird. I've never understood the coverage of the NBA and the way they do this. To me, it just doesn't make any sense. But at number 4, I have Donovan Mitchell of the Cleveland Cavaliers. And he has been having a hell of a season once again. And he's been doing this for years. Again, don't get it construed. Don't get it mixed up. He's been doing this for years. People just don't give him the credit that he deserves on it. 29.1 points, 4.7 rebounds, 5.8 assists, 1.5 steals on 0.2 blocks, 3.1 turnovers amongst all of that as well. Has shouldered a lot more of the load this year. And don't get me wrong, Evan Mobley has really turned it around. He's getting back into that all-defensive conversation, that Defensive Player of the Year conversation. They've got some really nice rotational pieces that are having a massive impact on their season that's really helped revive them. But at the end of the day, when he's shouldering a lot of this load, the efficiency is going to drop. And you see that with a lot of guys, pretty much except Jokic. That's what's happening. But by comparison, Donovan Mitchell listed 6'1", and Jokic is listed at 7 foot. Height matters in the game of basketball. 48.4% from the field for Mitchell this season, 38.4 from deep and 84.2 from the free throw line. For a small guard, they are absolutely elite numbers. He's played in 46 games of a possible 50 games, so I don't think we're going to have any stress about him making the 65-game mark. 33.9 minutes, so his minutes are up slightly compared to previous years. 27-19 record as the leader of this Cavaliers team, and I've got him responsible for 20 wins. He's just a scorer. He's a flat-out scorer. He contributes enough defensively within the team environment to, be able to keep consistently out there in big defensive moments, especially because his transition game is great. So if he's able to pluck a steal, great. We've got the best offensive option we've got on the floor. He's going to be really helping us and pushing us where he can. As I said, I just don't think this team around him has done enough this year, but they're doing little by little. If they can avoid that play-in, they set themselves up a little bit better. And they've set themselves really well, and part of it is because of this man on screen. Number 4 in my MVP race to the end of January for the 25-26 NBA season, Donovan Mitchell of the Cleveland Cavaliers. Coming in at number 3, the leader of the New York Knicks, and it's his absence that has made his case as compelling as anybody in the league this year. The New York Knicks sit second. They trail by a number of games, to be fair, to Detroit, but they have managed to wrestle themselves back into the second seed. The problem is when he's not there, they fall from that second seed, and they can fall as far as 4th or 5th and struggle to have the consistency in their lineup, the dedication in their lineup to get things done. Now, I spoke about it last year. Karl Anthony Towns, to me, was better last year. Was it more suited to him last year? Absolutely. But the reason they went to that conference finals last year was because of Karl Anthony Towns. The reason they are falling off this year when Jalen Brunson doesn't play is Karl Anthony Towns. And that's where the disconnect is from the previous year. Change of coach, change of role, not committed, not there for the team. The other side of it, Jalen Brunson turns up, puts on his sneakers, ties up those laces, and he hits the floor, whether it's with his ability to put points on the board or lay his body on the line as a smaller guy. Brunson threatened to do this sort of stuff when he was combined with Luka Doncic in Dallas, and now he's sitting here in New York, killing the rest of the league. Really big season for him. 27.6 points, 3.1 rebounds, 5.9 assists, 0.7 steals, 0.1 blocks on 2.3 turnovers, 47.5 from the field, 85.4 from deep, and, start that one again. 47.5 from the field, 38.4 from deep, 85.2% from the charity stripe. And a guy who is always out there, 43 games of a possible 48 games played there for Brunson, 34.3 minutes per game in those games, 29-14 record. So they are 1-4 without Jalen Brunson this year, and it shows. They've had a couple of streaks where he's been there. A couple of, I think in 3 weeks they had back-to-back streaks for 4 straight losses. That's tough. That's going to impact your season. They would probably be sitting as the number 1 team in the East right now, and that would certainly change where I have Brunson on this list. But that also speaks to how the team is. That also speaks to the general philosophy of the Knicks when it comes to big moments, especially since 1973. But I have Brunson as the leader in 20 of those 29 wins. He has been phenomenal. He continues to be phenomenal. And the big thing that helps him is that he is in a big market, because this personality, the Donovan Mitchell type of personality in Cleveland, wouldn't get him anywhere close to this sort of coverage in the national media, which is a shame. But he has been huge. He is number 3 in my MVP race to the end of January for the 25-26 NBA season, Jalen Brunson of the New York Knicks. At number 2, you'll notice that the top 3 consistently in the top 2 of this list all season pretty much won't change. It almost did, but generally speaking, it's probably not going to happen. And people can cite the fact that I have the leader of the the best player in the best team in the Eastern Conference at number 2. I don't care. There is a consistency that I deliver with all of this. If the best player in the league by a country mile, was sitting on a team that had won enough games to be 5th. They're the MVP. Go and look at the couple of years there where people hated the fact that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Luka Doncic weren't sitting in my MVP race. No issues with that there, as far as, they weren't a playoff team. I didn't have them in my MVP race. But you go and look at my All-NBA first team. They qualified for their games. They made the All-NBA first team. I had no issues with that. Just a factor. I've also had Shai as the MVP now, pretty much running for 3 straight years. Oh, hint, hint. He might feature in this list still. But Cade Cunningham has been massive this year. He was massive last year. He's continuing to grow this year on a Detroit team that is going by leaps and bounds. The key for Cunningham here, though, is he's got his hands on the ball everywhere, and I don't just mean offensively. Cade Cunningham has been crucial defensively as well. I don't think he's been the elite of the elite, but he has been, at times, their best perimeter defender. When you factor in the other guys contributing on the defensive side of the ball, and look at everything he brings offensively, wild. The only question that consistently remains around Cade is his efficiency, because it's when the efficiency disappears that his performance disappears. Let's look at his numbers for the year. 25.4 points, 5.6 rebounds, 9.7 assists, 1.5 steals and 0.8 blocks on 3.8 turnovers. And then the inefficiency factors coming in. You're 45.7 from the field. Want to start to lift that there. 32.5 from deep. If you're going to take him, you've got to make him, and you've got to make him at greater than a third of a clip nowadays. And 81.8 from the free throw line is certainly passable by any NBA standard. He's played in 41 of their games. 41 of 47 to be accurate. He's played in 35.4 minutes. They are 30 and 11 with him. They're 35 and 12 overall, but they're 30 and 11 with him. And I've got him as their best player in 20 wins. To me, he has to be the All-NBA first-team point guard. I get you've got Luka in the conversation, but if I'm being honest to my principles on this one here, my All-NBA first-team point guard would be Cade Cunningham. He is second in my MVP race to the end of January for the 25-26 NBA season, and he's only bested by a guy who is so far ahead I don't think he's going to get caught. He's been at the top of the MVP race for me for going on 4 straight seasons. The year he was runner-up, I thought he should have won it based on how I do things, and that's not to say I have an issue with Jokic winning them. It's clear that Jokic is an MVP. Like, that's the kind of season he's having. Are you an MVP? Did you have an MVP type season? That's really what we judge guys on. And this guy right here has been the most consistent shooting guard in this league. We're talking Kobe since we've seen this. And I appreciate that James Harden did quite a lot, but there was a lot wrong with what Harden did. Not necessarily from a play style, but the hype he got versus the results that he delivered. You have to factor that in when you consider guys for this list. And that's why at number 1, I have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander of the Oklahoma City Thunder. They're not going to break 70 wins. They're not going to break the all-time wins record, but they are still, to me, the standard bearer of this competition. Their lead isn't as much in the West as Detroit's is in the East from a game standpoint, but when you look at what he's producing and you look at the talent on OKC, it's not even close. I don't think it's close. I still think they're head and shoulders ahead. I still think Shai is head and shoulders ahead. I have Shai for 29 wins. That's 9 games better than everyone that I've got from 6th to 2nd in my list. At least 9 or 10 games better. That's a ridiculous margin. And it comes down to winning games. He's efficient. And the efficiency conversation isn't even close for me. 32 points, 4.4 rebounds, 6.2 assists, 1.3 steals on 0.8 blocks. He has just lifted to 2 turnovers a game. He's shooting 55.6% from the field, 39% from deep, and 89.4% from the free throw line. And you can talk about the parade all you want. Shai doesn't lead the league in attempts. Look at some of these guys that get to the line as much, if not more, or thereabouts as Shai, and they don't shoot it the same. Guys that shoot as many threes, they don't shoot it the same. And generally speaking from the floor, he's shooting as efficiently as a center. where they take all their shots within 5 feet of the rim. Crazy arguments being had right now. I don't think people kind of get it. 47 games played, 33.4 minutes. They're 36-11 under his stewardship. They're number 1 overall. He's missed 2 games. They've won those 2 games. That's nice. That's awesome. But to me, it's not even close. The MVP of the NBA to the end of January for the 25-26 NBA season is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander of the Oklahoma City Thunder. That's my list, team. Again, we'll recap it for you to have a look. We'll start with my honourable mentions. Honourable mention number 1, Jalen Johnson of the Atlanta Hawks, who I've got for 14 wins. Honourable mention number 2, Steph Curry of the Golden State Warriors, who I also have for 14 wins. And honourable mention number 3, I have Anthony Edwards of the Minnesota Timberwolves for 14 wins. At number 10, I have Kevin Durant of the Houston Rockets for 14 wins. At number 9, I have Nikola Jokic of the Denver Nuggets for 15 wins. At number 8, I have Devin Booker of the Phoenix Suns for 16 wins. At number 7, I have Luka Doncic of the Los Angeles Lakers for 17 wins. At number 6, I have Tyrese Maxey of the Philadelphia 76ers for 19 wins. At number 5, I have Jaylen Brown of the Boston Celtics for 19 wins. At number 4, I have Donovan Mitchell of the Cleveland Cavaliers for 20 wins. At number 3, I have Jalen Brunson of the New York Knicks for 20 wins. At number 2, I have Cade Cunningham of the Detroit Pistons for 20 wins. And at number 1, streets ahead of the opposition, I have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander of the Oklahoma City Thunder for 29 wins. For anyone paying attention with my list, that would be the equivalent number of wins combined with Kevin Durant and Nikola Jokic. Just to let that sit. Anyway, guys, that's been me. That has been my MVP race to the end of January for the 25-26 NBA season. I'm out.